Okay, everybody, this video is about do-it-yourself free mail. I think we can all figure out ways to save ourselves a few bucks, and this is a way that we can do it, and maybe even administrate our public servants even more. They obviously need it. Anyways, let's go. Um, First of all, you have to understand that if you have to ask a government employee if something applies to you, you have demonstrated that you're not competent. And there is no such thing as an incompetent state citizen. You have to know this and you have to be able to defend it. And you have to ask, if you have to ask if something applies to you, then it does. Then they'll tell you it does, and they'll be right because you're not competent. You have to know the law. You have to live the law. You have to be the king. And so, um, before you do this, you got to be able to defend it. I got the most of the important parts of this from a guy that I know on abodia.com/t and slash mail. Um, I've talked with the owner of that website about this process extensively. They hold a conference call every Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you're interested in participating, you can send an email to t@abodia.com, and he'll tell you how to either call in or get on the conference call on Skype. Um, very um, good information. So, to start things off, there are two postal entities in America. There's one called the United States Post Office and the other one called the United States Postal Service. The United States Post Office was established on the 26th of June, 1775, has never been bankrupt. The Articles of Confederation were passed by Congress in 1777 and ratified in 1781, so it was passed before established before the Articles of Confederation, and the Constitution was ratified in 1787, so it was obviously before the Constitution as well. And it handles the post. Okay, so it's not when you do the post office, you're sending the post. It's not mail. Okay, mail is a martial law terminology. The United States Postal Service was established on the 12th of August, 1970, and zip codes were started by proclamation number 3746 on September the 20th of 1966 by President Johnson. All employees of the Postal Service are U.S. citizens. The Postal Service uh, um, deals in the District of Columbia and the territories only. Okay, if you're a U.S. citizen or if you're in the District of Columbia and the territories, then you deal with the Postal Service. Otherwise, you deal with the United States Post Office, and that's different. And the Postal Service handles the mail. That's a martial law terminology. This is the act um, of this is the act as the Postal Reorganization Act is what they call it, but it was approved on August 12th, 1970 at 84 Stat 719. It's an act to improve and modernize the Postal Service, to reorganize the Post Office Department and for other purposes. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America and Congress assembled, that this act may be cited as the Postal Reorganization Act. Section 201 says there is established an independent establishment of the executive branch of the government of the United States, the United States Postal Service, and that's where they set up the Postal Service. Okay, so there's two entities. Um, Okay, so anyways, there's two states in every state. There's a lawful de jure state and there's a federal territory. Um, and this is a citation that's actually taken from the Supreme Court and cited again in this Pennsylvania case. There's been created a fictional federal state of XXX within a state. Um, State citizens are in the state, U.S. citizens are in the territory. State statutes are actually federal statutes under the international law rule. Okay, so again, you have to understand that if you are in the Texas state, that's international to the federal government. If you're a U.S. citizen, then you're not in Texas state; you're in Texas territory, and so it's all about citizenship. International law rules adopted for areas under federal legislative jurisdiction are federalized as state civil law, including common law, and the rule serves to federalize not only the statutory but the common law of a state. That's taken from a book published. It's called Jurisdiction Over Federal Areas Within the States, and it's the report of the Interdepartmental Committee for the Study of Jurisdiction Over Federal Areas Within the States. And that's part two, a text of the law of legislative jurisdiction submitted to the Attorney General and transmitted to the President in June of 1957. And this same document goes on to talk about state and federal venue, discuss the civil laws effective in an area of exclusive federal jurisdiction are federal law, notwithstanding their derivation from state laws, and a cause arising under such laws may be brought in or removed to a federal district court under sections 24 and 28 of the former Judicial Code, now sections 1331 and 1441 of the United States Code. So again, if you're a U.S. citizen, then all these state statutes are actually federal, okay? And actually, all these state statutes only apply to U.S. citizens. Anyways, a U.S. citizen is not entitled to an Article 3 court, but instead gets an Article 1 court with a plenary military dictatorship jurisdiction and Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, Constitution for the United States of America, as defined and reinstated in National Mutual Insurance Company of the District of Columbia versus Tidewater Transfer Company, which further states that citizens of the District of Columbia are not embraced by the judicial power under Article 3 of the Constitution for the United States of America. The same statement is held in Hepburn versus Dundas. The Supreme Court, through Chief Justice Marshall, held that a citizen of the District of Columbia was not a citizen of a state. We therefore decline to overrule the opinion of Chief Justice Marshall. Excuse me. We hold that the District of Columbia is not a state within Article 3 of the Constitution. In other words, cases between citizens of the district and those of the states are not included in the catalog of controversies over which Congress could give jurisdiction to the federal courts by virtue of Article 3. In other words, Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over citizens of Washington District of Columbia, and through their plenary power, military dictatorship, people, nationally covers those citizens, even when in one of the several states, as though the district expands for the purpose of regulating its citizens wherever they go throughout the states of the Union. And that's U.S. Supreme Court. Okay, so if any citizen, this is where it's codified under the United States Code. If any citizen or resident of the United States does not reside in and is not found in any of the United States judicial districts, such citizen or resident shall be treated as residing in the District of Columbia for purposes of any provisions of this title, and A, jurisdiction of the courts, or B, enforcement of a summons. Okay, and that is 26 U.S.C. 770139. Or 7408C. Okay, what happened is they made some changes, so it got moved. So I'm not sure which one it is today. Every taxpayer is assessed to K trust having sufficient interest in preventing abuse of the trust to be recognized in the field of this court's prerogative jurisdiction. If you want to be a U.S. citizen, then you're in interstate commerce. That's exactly what it is. A citizen of the United States is a civilly dead entity operating as co-trustee and co-beneficiary of the public charitable trust under the 14th Amendment, which upholds the debt of USA and US Inc. That's congressional record. It might be correctly said that there is no such thing as a citizen of the United States. A citizen of one of the states of the Union is held to be called a citizen of the United States, although technically and abstractly there is no such thing. State citizens are the only ones living under free government whose rights are incapable of impairment by legislation or judicial decision. U.S. Supreme Court. State citizenship is a vested substantial property right, and the state has no power to divest or impair these rights. The state cannot diminish rights of people. So, if Texas and every other state is foreign to the United States, which is the District of Columbia, if you are a state citizen, if you are a U.S. citizen and you are in the District of Columbia everywhere, Texas is a territory for U.S. citizens. The exclusive jurisdiction which the United States have in forts and dockyards ceded to them is derived from the express assent of the states by whom the cessions were made. It could be derived in no other manner, because without it the authority of the state would be supreme and exclusive therein. It is well established principle of law that all federal regulation applies only within the territorial jurisdiction of the United States. There is a canon of legislative construction which teaches Congress that unless a contrary intent appears, legislation is meant to apply only within territorial jurisdiction of the United States. Okay, so these are all cases that say that that if you're a state citizen, that the feds have no authority over you. That's basically what it said. In the sense of public international law, the several states of the Union are neither foreign to the United States nor are they foreign to each other, but it is not the case in the field of private international law. So they're talking about the two different differentiations here. So in public international law, they're not foreign to each other; they're territories, and but in private international law, they are foreign to each other. The United States government is a foreign corporation with respect to a state of the union. So if you're a U.S. citizen, it's public international law, and you're not foreign to the United States. You're in a territory, and if you're a state citizen, then it's private international law, and it's foreign. So this is actually taken from 12 Stat 705, which is talking about postage. Okay, this is Chapter 71, which was an act that was passed by Congress in 1863, March 8, 1863, and I can't remember the name of the title of the act, but it doesn't really matter. So anyway, section 22, it says, and be it further enacted that the rate of postage of all domestic letters transmitted in the mails of the United States not exceeding 1/2 ounce in weight shall be uniform at 3 cents for each 1/2 ounce, or a fraction thereof of additional weight. There shall be charged an additional rate of 3 cents to be in all cases prepaid by postage stamps plainly affixed to such letter. Okay, so there's friends of mine that use 3-cent stamps, and what they're saying is it's domestic mail. That's DC and the territories, and actually Congress has there's been acts that were passed since then. So I think the postage actually in this case for domestic mail is as what it is today. But they get away with doing 3-cent stamps, and that's fine. But I'm not sure that they should be. But anyways, now in section 23, this is the next section, and be it further enacted that the rate of postage on all letters not transmitted through the mails of the United States. Did you know that the U.S. Postal Service is a transmitting utility? That's right. But delivered, so that's commercial. That's all commercial. But delivered through the post office or its carriers. Commonly described as local or drop letters not exceeding 1/2 ounce in weight shall be uniform at 2 cents. Okay, so if you're using the general post office, and we're going to see here in a minute where that comes in, then you are not transmitting mails of the United States through the mails of the United States, but delivering. But your post is being sent by the post office. Okay. Additional rate. So then it says it's 1/2 cent, 2 cents for 1/2 ounce, and an additional rate of for each 1/2 ounce of fraction or additional weight. Cases prepaid by postage. So it's 2 cents for the first 1/2 ounce and 2 cents for every additional 1/2 ounce, and that's found at 12 Stat 705, Chapter 71, Section 23, which was approved March 8th, 1863. And this same act, this is 12 Stat 71, 1863. This in Section 2, okay? This is at the very beginning of the act. And it says, and be it further enacted that the Postmaster General, all postmasters and special agents, and all persons employed in the General Post Office, okay, or in the care, custody, and conveyance of all mail hereinafter appointed or employed shall, previous to entering in the duties assigned to them or the execution of their trusts. Okay, so it's a trust. And before they are entitled, they shall be entitled to receive any emoluments. Therefore, in addition to the oath of office prescribed by the Act of July 2nd, 1862, respectively taken, subscribed to the following oaths. So they have two oaths. Okay, if they're involved, this is where the General Post Office comes in. So um, there's the U.S. Postal Service and the General Post Office. Okay, and so that's why, and we'll see how that's all used here in a minute. Okay, but so it's the General Post Office. The USPS is a transmitting utility. The USPS employees have oaths. The General Post Office have an additional oath. Employees receive emoluments. An emolument is any advantage, profit, or gain received as a result of one employment or holding of office. Okay, so these are all government employees. So then this Bodia.com has sent out a bunch of letters, and this is the way they send it. Okay, so it's from, and the name is, they always copyright it because that way they can't use it. And it's in square brackets, so that means there's no name there. General Post Office, okay, and that's not in square brackets, that's on the page, it's at the very beginning. Judicial District in square brackets, and it's care of the street, the town, the state, and then in square brackets is RFD, which stands for Rural Federal District. And then you put in the zip code. And that's non-domestic, zip exempt without the United States, and then say about an inch down or half an inch down by itself, you put in first class U.S. mail, fully prepaid, 12 stats at large, 705, chapter 71, section 23, 2 cents per half ounce. And then the address where you send it to, you do this part down here. It's General Post Office. It's got to be using the General Post Office, and it's to ABC Company, care of 123 any street, any town, any state. Oh, you got to put in, I forgot to put in the zip code. That should be in there, the same kind of format, RFD in square brackets. Non-domestic, zip exempt without the United States. And actually, you don't have to use the zip code. You can leave that off, and they'll figure it out. It takes a little longer. Actually, I've had mail, all sorts of mail, get to me without the zip code, but so I do it without the zip code as well. But in order to help them, I put the zip code there. It's a lot of hassle otherwise. Anyways, the owner of this Bodia.com website told me that they've sent over 6,000 pieces of mail this way over the years. So that's well established, 2 cents per half ounce. And the method 2, this is method 2. Okay, and this is showing a green card that came back. It was signed for, and it came back. And notice how General Post Office, zip exempt, the name, care of, the address, Northport, Florida, and the RFD. That's all there, non-domestic without the United States. Okay, and they're using a self-adhesive label. When I do mine, I print it on there. And this is the return address. Notice they use a 2-cent stamp because you don't want to, if you're doing this, this is going to be free. And if you're doing this, then you don't want to take advantage of any privileges or benefits because that's a contract. And so General Post Office, zip exempt, care of this avenue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and it got there no problem. And this is a certified letter that was sent out. This is a different one, but it's basically the same thing. Um, and So they put all this stuff on here, and if you look at the mailing address, it's the name is copyrighted, care of General Post Office near Charleston, West Virginia Republic, non-domestic without the United States, and then they mention 18 U.S.C. Section 1701, which is obstruction of the mails. And we're going to talk about why everything's on here. But they also talk about the International Mail Manual. They even have a link to it, and marking 742.1 as marking postage paid, and 742.2 is parcels without stamps treat as prepaid, and private property, no trespassing. That's all important. And notice they put the name in square brackets, and because technically that are not in square brackets, it's in a box, because the box takes it off the page. Anything in square brackets or a box, it's off the page. And so then it's postage paid, UPURL 114, and as a signature there, okay, and that's copyrighted, and I don't do that, but some people want to do it, that's fine. Anyways, the point is that when you sign it, you become the postmaster, and the Foreign Office of Origin. You have to understand that if you are in Texas State and you're sending something in America, then you're foreign, okay, and but they deliver it. And notice the date, and we're going to get into that in a minute. The post office put the date in there, and which is interesting because they left the date out. So your signature, I use red ink when I do the signature. Your signature is your postmark. One time I signed a stamp in front of a postal clerk and they told me that I canceled the stamp. Your signature makes you the postmaster. The date, I didn't use it. The post office corrected it. Notice how a 2 cent stamp is used on the green card, so you're not taking advantage of any benefit. Um, these ones show the use of self-adhesive labels, but you can print directly on the envelope or the green card. In addition to the items shown on the pictures, I sent out dozens of certified letters using this method. I'm planning on doing some registered ones in the near future, and I just drop them in the mailbox. Some of them start tracking online immediately. Some of them start tracking at the first major city, and some of the tracking starts when they are delivered. Some of them track when they are delivered only. So it's just, and we'll show you here. This one here started tracking at Livingston, Texas, and that was where I dropped it in the mailbox. And then it ultimately went to Plano. And I haven't got the green card back on this yet, but I expect that I will. And this one here just tracked when it was delivered. Okay, they scanned it in when it was delivered, and that's it. Okay, and so you're going to get them every way, I'm sure. And this one here, this one was dropped in the mailbox near Livingston, Texas, but and so then that goes through Houston, and so it didn't start tracking till it hit Houston, and so you're going to get them every way. But you can. The point is you can go on the USPS's website and you can start. I always use this. What I do is I print off the USPS's website after it's delivered, and I staple my green card and my receipt and everything to it, and that's my evidence. And for when the lawsuit comes. And this is 18 U.S.C. Section 1701. Whoever knowingly and willfully obstructs or retards the passage of the mail or any carrier or conveyance carrying the mail shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 6 months or both. So they cannot um, obstruct or retard the passage of the mail. This is the Universal Postal Union, taken from the Letter Post Manual, Article RL 114, prepayment, methods of denoting prepayment. Um, um, and if you go down in section 2.2, which is mentioned on the front of these letters, items may also be provided with an indication that full postage has been prepaid, for example, tax per queue, okay, or postage paid. This indication shall appear at the top right-hand part of the address side and be authenticated by a date stamp impression of the office of origin. Okay, when you sign it, that's your stamp. That's your, I should say, your mark, your postal mark. Okay, so the post office actually corrected that by inserting the date. And I just pulled up this letter post manual online. Now, there's a friend of mine in Canada. She's brilliant. It's a lady, and she does this. She's been doing it for a long time, and she does it. She makes up self-adhesive labels, and the red part up at the top is what the label says, and the OHMS is on Her Majesty's service. It's and then IMM stands for International Mail Manual, and she made a sheet of self-adhesive labels. And so it takes. If you want, I'll send you. Anybody from Canada can send me an email. I'll send you the labels. She takes the article to the clerk. she's she's a little bit more brazen about it. And if the clerk asks what it's about, she says, "It's not my job to teach you how to do your job." So, anyways, she's pretty gutsy. And she has done registered mail too. And International Mail Manual, Section 742. Some marking of foreign items of foreign origin do not bear postage stamps, but instead are marked postage paid or on postal service, packed per queue, followed by the postmark. The marking on Her Majesty's Service or OHMS is sometimes used. Treat this mail as prepaid. Okay. And parcels without postage stamps. Some foreign offices do not put postage stamps on parcels. All such parcels received must be regarded as prepaid. That's in the International Mail Manual. And Congress has increased the USPS requirement for pension reserves. And so Congress is using the USPS to finance their fictitious federal debt, is what they're doing. And so, anyways, Patrick Henry said, "Give me liberty or give me death," after he witnessed a man flogged to death for refusing to take a license. Once a fraud, always a fraud. This is all a fraud, okay? If you're in DC and the territories, everything they do is a fraud, okay? The When you're operating as a state citizen in Texas, that is the lawful de jure way that it's supposed to be done, okay? And when you participate that, you're participating in a fraud. Things invalid from the beginning cannot be made valid by some subsequent act. Um, a thing void in the beginning does not become valid by lapse of time. Time cannot render valid an act void in its origin. Out of fraud, no action arises, and any act by any government official to conceal a fraud becomes an act of fraud. It is a fraud to conceal a fraud. A fraud is inexcusable and unpardonable. Fraud and deceit should excuse no man. These are all maxims of law. Any fraud amounts to injustice. Fraud and justice never dwell together. What is otherwise good and just, if sought by force or fraud, becomes bad and unjust. And so these are all maxims of law. These people are these DC Satanists. This is what's happened to our republic. Is it's been seized. A bunch of Satanists have seized control. And you're the father of your father, the devil. The lust of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. And that's John 8:44. But the fearful and unbelieving and abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. And so they're all going to go to hell. And the United States Postal Service is for the District of Columbia and the Territories, okay? And that's all, everything they do is a fraud. All federal codes, rules, and regulations are for the District of Columbia and the Territories. All state codes, rules, and regulations are for the federal territory, for the District of Columbia and the Territories. They're using your own ignorance to generate revenue for their bankster thieves. That's exactly what they're doing. By voluntarily contributing to their fraudulent fictitious system, you're encouraging them and financing your own destruction. That's exactly what's going on. And so then there's some question as to whether people that participate in that are also Satanists. So we all need to educate ourselves about this and quit being Satanists. Um, this is 1 Peter 3:19, by which he also went and preached to the spirits in prison. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall punish the host of the high ones that are on high, and the kings of the earth, and they shall be gathered together as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and they shall be shut up in the prison, and after many days shall be visited. And that's Isaiah. In other words, they're all going to hell. It behooves every man who values liberty of conscience for himself to resist invasions of it in the case of others, or their case may, by change of circumstances, become his own. Thomas Jefferson. If ye love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animating contest of freedom, go home from us in peace. We ask not your counsel or arms. Crouch down, lick the hands which feed you. May your chain set lightly upon you, and may our posterity forget that you are ever our countrymen. Samuel Adams, quoted from the debates of 1776. So this is actually has a way of that you can spend a lot less money on sending mail. This is actually a way that you can keep some of those IOUs that you get. When it is said, when it be said in any country of the world, my poor are happy, neither ignorance or distress is to be found among them. My jails are empty of prisoners, my streets of beggars, the aged are not want, the taxes are not oppressive. The rational world is my friend because I am friend of its happiness. When these things can be said, then may that country boast of its constitution and government. That's Thomas Paine, and I don't think we have anything to boast about here. In America, we have a bunch of Satanists that have seized control, and everything is the exact opposite of all of that. The prisons are full. Uh, uh, the old people are in want. Taxes are oppressive, um, and we have a bunch of thieves in the government. But if the watchmen see the sword come and blow not the trumpet, and the people be not warned, if the sword come and take away a person from among them, he is taken in his iniquity. But his blood will I require at the watchman's hand. And that's Ezekiel 33:6. So that's my big motivation for publishing these videos, is to make sure that I am blameless before God on Judgment Day. And so now you've watched the video, so now you need to do your part to spread it around and make people aware of this, um, and because that way that you can be blameless too. I hope that we can all make it so that we're blameless. Either you're part of the problem or you're part of the solution. You are now a watchman. Circulate this video far and wide. Um, Other videos: Bankster Thieves 1, 2, and 3, the Churchianity series, Bankrupt Corporate So-Called Governments, Bar Members 1 and 2, Unidroit, Martial Laws Here, Quasi-Contracts and Roman Civil Law, De facto Courts, All Courts are Ecclesiastical Courts, DC Courts in Texas, and Jurisdiction. Um, and upcoming videos. Okay, I got some upcoming videos. There's the do-it-yourself traffic stop, the do-it-yourself petition for a writ of habeas corpus, the do-it-yourself toll roads. These are some upcoming videos I'm working on. Copies of these documents can be found in my private group at Yahoo called Administrating Your Public Servants. I have YouTube videos that are videos of private information shares that show these and other court citations that are available for a donation. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept IOUs, Federal Reserve notes, PayPal gifts, checks, money orders, etc. Send me an email for particulars. Because of all this change that the Satanists in the White House has been bringing, I've been out of work for almost 4 years. Matter of fact, except for a 6-week period last summer, I've been out of work. And so donations are especially appreciated. If you can send me a donation, I would certainly appreciate it. It would be very useful. Um, and so I appreciate you taking the time to watch this. If you find this useful, then you need to pay it forward. If you don't know what pay it forward means, then watch the movie. Um, and My blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. Um, my email is engineerwin@yahoo. I have a YouTube profile, Sovereign Living. Facebook, I have a community page called Sovereignty International, a private group called Sovereignty International. My Yahoo private group is Administrating Your Public Servants, and my Google private group is Administrating Your Public Servants. So I appreciate you taking the time to watch this. I try to keep it nice and short. And I hope you are able to save some money by doing it. If you choose to assert yourself, it's basically they got all these little hooks in us, and if you want to assert yourself, we have to. It's a way of life. It really is, and you have to understand that and assert yourself and start saying, I don't want to participate anymore. And thanks for watching, and I hope you have a real great day.